my dears, today we are going to talk about HSPs, or highly sensitive people, which is apparently an identity. But a lot of people are treating it as a diagnosis. The whole thing is quite baffling to me, so we are going to explore this one together. Also, image description for my blind and low vision viewers. I am sitting in front of a white wall with a mirror on one side. There are green leaves behind me and also little paintings of tiny dogs. And I'm wearing a brown dress with short sleeves and my hair is vaguely curly. I'm going to try to add that to every single one of my videos from now on if I can remember to do so. But yeah, anyway, so what is this HSP thing? So it began in the 1990s when it was coined by a psychologist by the name of Elaine Aron as a term to describe her sensory and social experiences. It has gained traction as an identity kind of in the wellness movement category since the pandemic began, and a lot of people argue that it's just autism with a different label. But you know what? Let's just have an open mind here. Maybe it is a different thing. So let's read some of the traits of an HSP. So we have highly empathetic, strongly sensing / feeling others' emotions, being unable to read / misinterpreting facial expressions, sensory processing issues, stimming and being sensory seeking, frequent emotional, sensory, and informational overwhelm, being introverted and drained by social expectations, intense daydreams, a rich inner world, spending a lot of time self-analyzing and overthinking, getting overwhelmed in new situations / environments, and therefore planning extensively ahead to avoid this, having panic attacks and shutdowns, sometimes including losing the ability to speak. Changes are upsetting and overwhelming, prone to chronic pain and chronic illness, masking to hide these traits. That's just autism. That's not even trying to not be autism. It's not like uncommon traits of ADHD and girls thing that is literally just autistic traits that is like a trend. This is just objectively cookie cutter autism. But don't worry, Aron has a list of reasons as to why it's not autism. 3 to be precise. So first we have that autistic people don't have theory of mind or self-awareness like HSPs do. Secondly, HSP does not include hyposensory things, only hypersensory things. And also HSPs don't get special interests, so obviously it's not autism. Oh man, alright, let's start with the last one on this list. Special interests are actually more than just memorizing train schedules. In case you didn't know, they can include watching the same show over and over again and talking about it a lot, or having one lifelong passion, or even little things from week to week. I know that I have short-term special interests, some that last only a day or two. Also, some autistic people don't have special interests because they are so traumatized and burnt out, and others just don't even realize that they do have them because, in case you didn't know, autism is a spectrum, so that means that there's no one specific autistic experience. Speaking of that, let's go into the theory of mind self-awareness point here. I think the first thing to say here is, look at me. Do I seem self-aware? Yeah. Do I also seem undeniably autistic? Also, yeah. The autistic people lack empathy and social awareness altogether thing, that theory has been heavily debunked time and time again, and I, for one, have empathy so strong that I can only watch Animal Planet or documentaries because things with plot just completely ruin my life. And last time I checked, I am still very, very autistic despite my hyper empathy. I mean, sure, sometimes we struggle to see other people's emotions or understand where others are coming from, but that also more or less is listed very obviously in the HSP traits, so I think that one just talked itself into a circle pretty quickly. And then the last point here is it doesn't include hyposensitivity. So let's break that one down. Hyposensitivity is the opposite of hypersensitivity, and that word is interchangeable with sensory seeking. When you're hypersensitive, it's really obvious, like, oh, that thing's too loud, or the texture is bad, or something like that. And it's really hard to pinpoint a specific time when you're not feeling enough sensory input because you don't typically explicitly notice that. You just suddenly feel the need to climb under a weighted blanket or put on a second pair of socks or watch a sensory video or pet a dog. So hopefully that explained that one away for you. I am kind of joking around a bit here, simply because I find this whole idea to be very funny on some level, but I do genuinely understand where it came from as well. Aron created this in the 1990s, a time when the only definition of autism that existed was exclusively Rain Man. Like, Christopher Boone from Curious Incident hadn't even entered the scene yet. So of course she would look at herself and look at the autism criteria and go, I'm not that, I'm just quirky. I can't be autistic because I'm not that. Because heck, I said the same thing about myself in like 2013 when we had so much more autistic representation out there. And the first professional that I went to for a diagnosis said I wasn't autistic because I have good social skills and empathy. So for real, I get the need to create this label for her. But I also think that we don't need this label anymore. And I think that the reason that it suddenly just appeared everywhere during the pandemic is because once everybody was forced to stop what they were doing and, not do social things and whatnot, people realized how tired and masked and unauthentic the world made them. And so that's when we saw a massive expansion in the wider autism and neurodivergent community because of this. So I'm not surprised that we saw a rise in this idea, the idea of being a highly sensitive person as well, because we all crave community and understanding, especially when it comes to our struggles. Like, I completely and totally get it. It makes complete sense. But it is also a little silly to have an oat milk version of autism, and this also causes wider issues, because this is just another euphemism, another autism without the stigma thing that ultimately makes the stigma against autism infinitely worse. It is fairly common today for doctors to give their patients an ADHD and sensory processing disorder diagnosis rather than the autism one that they should get. I'm an example of that because they perceive ADHD to have less stigma and the accommodations in general are the same as autism. And the thing with that, however, is that ADHD and autism may have the same general accommodations, but the causes for the needs of those accommodations are very, very different. So the person on the other end of this diagnosis might be even more confused than they were before they got this diagnosis. And because of this, we've seen the stigma for ADHD turn into, this is just a trend that doesn't mean anything and it's not legitimate, and autism continues to be, this is a scary disease and it's awful and terrible and they don't have any empathy and they're sociopaths. And now, since the popularization of the term HSP, therapists and doctors have started telling patients about this one, saying that maybe they'll identify with it, rather than telling them, hey, I think you're autistic, because they're too scared to say that. So we have yet another pointless barrier in the way of people getting the supports that they need, as well as working on making the stigma against autistic people better. So I get that it does feel quite strange to have autism actually be as common as HSP is making it seem, but the thing is that that's very probably the case. Obviously, a handful of people will be like, I'm a highly sensitive person because it makes me quirky. But in general, it's something that a lot of people are seeing themselves in. Because, well, neurotypicality, she doesn't exist. I'm firmly convinced of that. So to recap this little video, I guess, autism is very common. Welcome to the dark side. We have STEM toys. Please stop telling people to use the term HSP and actually make them admit to themselves that they're autistic. And I know that that's really scary and it's hard because we all have a little internalized ableism goblin inside of us who's like, no, I can't be. That's a disability that I don't have. Blah. Trust me, we've all been there. I have a guide for you, specifically for you. I will link that in the description for you. And yeah, please stop trying to be an artsy, quirky wellness person who's creating a new term to identify with in order to avoid the connotations associated with the diagnosis that term actually is. I really don't think that that was the initial intention of the creation of this term, and I also really don't think that most people who use this to describe themselves would even have the idea of autism cross their minds as a possibility for themselves, but it also does have real-world impacts that are very, very negative. I will link the HSP website in the description, because if you stop thinking about how misguided and infuriating it is that people are getting more support for being autistic by simply using a different name for it, it's kind of entertaining to look and just go, how does this lady not realize? But I think that honestly at this point she probably does and is just pretending that she doesn't. So that's the thing. But anyway, yeah, that's all I have to say on this topic. Thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Remember, your story isn't over. It has only just begun. I have a very fun video coming up soon, so I look forward to seeing you in that one in the next one, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next one. I already said that. But yeah, have a good day.